Why don't you like the term high value women?
Like, what makes a woman low value? Why would she be a low value? To me, all women are high value, you know? I don't like when it's enforced on me or said you have to wear it or otherwise you're not like a high value woman. But I say even if you can't force love onto your parents, you have to at least respect them. It's just all these stigmas we have about others because we are not educated and didn't put in effort to do our own research.
I'm never believing propaganda again. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Elena Cardone Show. Today, my guest is super fantastic. I have Jamila Musayeva, who is an etiquette, a certified etiquette coach. She has 1 million followers on YouTube. She's an author of a book, and I just find this subject so fascinating because I feel like this is sort of a tradition that is falling to the wayside. And certainly I did not grow up learning etiquette. So I wanted to have you on the show today to understand more about what you do, who's your audience, who signs up for these things, and just really pick your mind on how I can present myself better if my husband and I were to take more of a political turn in that direction. How should I be conducting myself? So yes, I will admit I'm slightly greedy by having you on the show today because I wanna ask these questions. So let me start by this. How did you get into etiquette? Were you raised this way? How do you know did you research? Tell me about how does one become a certified etiquette coach?
So before I get into to answer your question, I want to thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to meet you in person. I'm a huge fan. So to start with the etiquette, so I did my undergraduate degree here in Washington, D.C. in the United States at the George Washington University. I studied international relations. And I remember when I was doing my degree, we had workshops for etiquette that was hosted by Washington School of Etiquette and GW. So I attended a few of those. And I really loved it, but I never really thought of it as a career. And then when I moved to Europe, I did my master's degree also in international relations. But then we were introduced to like protocol, diplomatic protocol, like the formal dining etiquette according to Continental style. So I got to experience, so I was born and raised in Azerbaijan, which is a very small country. We're always very multicultural, open, tolerant to other cultures, religions, traditions. So I always had an interest of how things were done in different countries. And because I also traveled a lot, I always had that curiosity in me. But it was really my educational background that made me interested in etiquette. And when I came back to Azerbaijan, I started working at Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy. And that's when I realized that a lot of young people that went to Diplomatic Academy had all the knowledge of how to be a good diplomat, but they didn't have the skills in terms of like the etiquette, how to present themselves in the best light. So I wanted to teach that. And I went to London and did my etiquette training so that I can become certified in teaching that. And I guess it's also being just exposed to different parts of the world and understanding that something that's okay in America is not okay in Europe or the other way around, and understanding how I can know better so I can fit better in a way or respect others in a better way. So that's what got me interested in etiquette, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
That sounds fascinating. Tell us one tip that an American should avoid in Europe that's acceptable here but not abroad.
I would say like mostly about dressing up. I know it's something that people lately have forgotten, the art of dressing up and showing up in your best light. But this is something, I'll tell you a story from university, from the times I was in Belgium doing my master's degree. So I was in US for 4 years, and then I moved to Europe to do my master's. One day in the morning, I'm coming out of a supermarket, and bear in mind, I was in a really small town called Bruges. We don't see a lot of like Americans. We didn't see, at least when I was studying there. It was a small town, mostly Europeans, a lot of tourists, but never really in the morning. At 7 a.m. you wouldn't see anyone on the street. And so I'm walking out of supermarket and I see a couple, and they are like dressed super casual. They have these leggings and flip-flops, and this like very sweatpants. And I look up and I'm like, this is not someone from Europe. This must be someone from US. And then when I look up, I see it's Ashton, Kutcher and Mila Kunis at the time when they were dating. So they were like undercover. No one knew about it. And I remember like, I was like, oh my God. I rushed up to them. I was like, can I please take a picture? And they're like, no, we don't feel like taking pictures. I understand, early morning and they're like just like on a vacation. But that was a time when they were dating. And this really made me realize how they stood out from everyone in Bruges because of the way they were dressed up. You don't really see a lot of people like dressing so much casually, like super down, like in flip-flops or like Crocs outside on the streets. So you can see that around the beach area, but not necessarily in town.
So now, when Mila and Ashton did not take a photo with you, did they break an etiquette protocol?
They did not, actually. Perhaps it was me who broke the etiquette. I was young and super excited to, see them. But actually, they were on a vacation, and it wasn't time. I mean, as a person who admires their work, I can have the right to approach because these are public personas. So people love them and they want to have a photo, and that's okay. But I think it's also like it was early in the morning. Maybe they were taking a walk. Now I realize I would never approach them at this time of understanding how it might feel. So I would not approach them, not to put them in that uncomfortable situation of saying no. But they said no.
But for the people that feel that they wouldn't want to risk maybe an opportunity that could have developed into something, is this where this is kind of a tricky subject? Where do you draw the line? Because if you didn't say anything, maybe this potential thing could never have happened.
I agree, but I also think that, for example, now I understand if someone is in the restaurant in a public space, if they're in the restaurant, so they're around other people, I can approach because, they put themselves in a situation where it's in a public. If they wanted some privacy, they would be somewhere, in a private place. But this was early morning in a little like street in Bruges, and maybe they were just like going for a walk. And I guess it was a bit intrusive on my part to approach and say, hey, I want a picture. And obviously they were not in the mood. They weren't dressed for a picture.
Right.
But I took my chances. Were I to advise anyone to do the same now, I would say no, unless you really, really want and take the risk.
And you're willing to take the risk, because it is tricky. So we live on the beach, and it's a private beach, but the public can walk by. And there's been a few people that have recognized us in our yard that then feel that they can walk up. And that really bothers me.
Of course.
And of course, we have security, so it's okay. But to me, we tell them this is not the place for that. You will stain my mind about you because you don't have awareness. Like, come to the business, go through the proper channel and protocols. Don't approach me with your business idea on a weekend when I'm with my children. It just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I completely agree. That's why I'm saying if they were to see you in a public space, so again, with children, for me, it's also taboo. If you're out with children and you're not maybe a mommy blogger, then I would say, like stay away at the time when people are experiencing or having this family time, because it's very intrusive. Unless I see you out in a restaurant with your husband, the two of you together, I might approach and say, hey, I love what you're doing. Can I take a picture?
Yeah.
So it depends.
And I really like that too. When I'm at a restaurant with Grant, people wait. I've noticed that people wait till we're either on dessert or through with dessert, and then they'll come over and say how much they like us both.
Yeah.
Or Grant, and so recently that's come to my mind that, wow, people are more aware these days.
That's very nice. That's very nice. And I think we should.
And I like it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We should endorse this more and more, especially with social media and us being so approachable through like platforms, social media platforms. Sometimes people lose this sense of where it's okay to cross that line and where it's not okay. So I really endorse the idea of like keeping those boundaries, understanding that if I'm putting myself out on social media, doesn't mean I want you to, be intrusive in my personal life. And when I'm in person with my kids out somewhere, which is probably one of the reasons why I never share pictures of my kid's face, So no one really knows how they look from the base. So
Right.
it's something I do for my own sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone should draw the line where they feel that it's comfortable for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now for this portion of our interview, I'm going to ask you some questions here, and as best as you can in like a 30-second
Okay.
minute area, I'm going to run through these questions. Okay, so how many languages do you speak, and how did you learn so many?
I speak six languages. Uh, I
Wow.
Azerbaijani Russian, because Azerbaijan was part of Soviet Union. So growing up, I was exposed to both. I was
Rich in oils and resources,
and
upper middle,
caviar and all the best
upper middle class. I love this. Okay.
super multicultural, multi-religious, super tolerant, and I was always exposed to all of that growing up. And so then I picked up English, and then I picked up French, and then I picked up Spanish, and then I picked up German, but I didn't really practice it much after university. And then I picked up Arabic quite early on, but then I left it off, and now I'm continuing to learn it. It's very difficult. And to answer your question, I was exposed to languages from early age on, which is something I endorse. And I practice a lot with my children. I have a small YouTube video about that, how they're already like 9 and 6 and they speak 4 languages. And I'm trying to teach them more. I think language is just about practice. No one is really gifted at it. It's just if you are exposed to it from early days on, you can pitch as many languages as you want to your child. Because it's like, if it's not as a classroom, but rather in a form of a conversation that is out there every day, in a form of a music, a movie, a cartoon, a little book. So they learn languages playfully, and that's what I've been doing, and I think it works.
What year do kids stop learning languages easily?
I don't necessarily know that because I'm not a linguist per se, but I would assume once maybe they hit an age of like 12, 13, when like the puberty hits, maybe I'm assuming it's much more difficult to, unless they have to sit and like learn the language. But up until then, so my daughter is 9, she learns all the language playfully. So she'll have like play dates with a native speaker, and she's just exposed to it as you would be exposed to a certain song. You know how the song, when you hear it over and over again, just stuck in your head?
Yes.
So that's how they're learning languages.
Oh, nice. What is the most important etiquette that everyone in the U.S. gets wrong?
Gets wrong. I think for me, what I've experienced is certain topics that are okay to talk about here casually, like, I don't know, how much money you make, or what's your religion, what's your like political views. Unless you feel comfortable sharing about it, I don't think anyone should be intrusive into asking, like, Elena, tell me what are your political views. Those things are private, and they should be kept private unless a person agrees to expose it. I often find that in a conversation or at lunch or dinner with Americans, they overexpose or overshare a lot about personal topics. Sometimes people would overshare something about their sexual life that I might not be comfortable listening to. So I think this is something that is very different from US in general and Europe and the rest of the world, where a lot of topics are still taboo unless you're very close with someone. So I would say that's a big thing.
Ooh, I love that. How does nonverbal communication etiquette, like hand gestures, work?
They're very different from culture to culture. Some signs that I will not be showing now because they might be disrespectful in certain cultures, but something that means okay in US can mean completely different thing in a different culture.
You have to let us know.
Yeah,
like what?
Like the okay sign that
Like
they
this
do,
one.
yeah, like they do.
Oh, that
in
means
like Middle Eastern part of the world.
that's bad.
It's a bad thing to show, yeah. So it could be offensive. And knowing that.
Same with the bottom of the shoe.
Bottom of the shoe.
We didn't know crossing the legs is bad.
Exposing the bottom of the shoe towards someone who comes from Middle East, India, Asia, it's very disrespectful. There was an interview episode between Sadhguru and this huge YouTube personality guy who interviews a lot of popular people. And he sat throughout the whole interview with his feet, like bottom of his feet showing towards Sadhguru, and I don't think he knew about it.
Of course,
but me watching it made me feel uncomfortable, and a lot of Indians commented about that, saying, it was so disrespectful towards him. Again, these things happen not because we intentionally want to hurt the other person, but because we don't know. And out of ignorance comes a lot of like hurting and unkindness, unintentional unkindness. But you know how they say, if you don't know the laws, it's not on the government, but it's on you. You have to know the laws. So for me, etiquette is just laws of life. And if you are not respecting them, it's not on the person that gets offended, it's on you. You had to know them in advance if you have a guest from a certain culture, what you're supposed to do and whatnot. And it's really just about being knowledgeable and respecting the rules where you have to. Again, I'm not endorsing that you have to live by a certain like strict guidebook at home, when you're comfortable with your friends, when you want to be yourself and relax, but you have to know these rules so you know when you can implement them.
So that person that interviews people, they should have reached out to you ahead of time to spare themselves the anguish of probably the upset that they received.
But and it's interesting, like in every presidential like cabinet, there is like diplomatic protocol, head of diplomatic protocol, who informs the president about whoever is going to visit, what are the cultural customary rules and regulations and etiquette and how they should be seated. So, and a president doesn't have to know everything. He has to be informed by his team. So I think in this case, maybe it would be good for the people that are in his team to do a research about Indian culture and just let him know what are things he could do and could not do. Another hand gesture I would include the part is greeting forms, because it's different from culture to culture. Someone handshakes, someone does namaste, others go for double, cheek kiss. So it's different. And then there is this clash of like gestures. There was this huge thing when Obama, I think he was greeting the Japanese emperor. I think it was the emperor, maybe the PM. And he bowed and he went for a handshake altogether. There's a picture of that. It was a huge thing on the news.
Oops.
So he went for a handshake and then he bowed at the same time. So you either do handshake or you bow. And there was also a huge, I think, outbreak about the fact that he bowed lower than the American flag. I think there was like this diplomatic mishap there too. So you have to know all these rules so you don't make a fool of yourself in a way.
Wow. Have any political teams hired you?
I work a lot with personal clients that are in government or are members of royal family. So maybe they need to get ready for an international, let's say, formal dining experience, or maybe they will want to work with a different client from Middle East or Asia or US or, the West. So I often get hired to train in a particular topic. So it might be business etiquette or diplomatic protocol. Yes, and I do get consultations based on what should I wear, how should I behave, and all that. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So let's say tomorrow I'm going to this fabulous royal dinner, and I do now know to eat from the outside in, the utensils from the outside in, and the dessert is at the top.
Yes.
Now, how am I supposed to cut and eat? Americans like to cut and then eat at one time. I know that. And then when I'm done, how do you place it? Side by side, up? Like there's different philosophies on that.
Exactly. And it again depends on the culture. But to begin with, there was a scene in Titanic that taught us that you go from outward inwards.
Is that not true?
It is true.
Oh,
No, it's good. It's good. We get
okay. I'm like, oh boy.
Titanic. I actually have a Patreon community where every month I do analysis of etiquette movies, like the etiquette in the movies. And so I've done over 30 different movies. And I remember when I was doing Titanic, the rule was, there's a scene when he's been taught like from outward. Was it Titanic? Or yeah, I think it was Titanic. Yeah, from outwards inwards. And there's a logic behind it, because you start from the outwards and it's cleared out, and then you come closer to the end of the meal. And then the dessert cutlery is placed above the plate, and when dessert comes, the waiter or the staff that serves you, they will push the fork and spoon to the opposite sides. It's where their handles are pointing down to the plate, and that's, time for dessert. But it used to be the rule that for very formal royal etiquette, you wouldn't have the dessert utensils above the plate.
You don't.
They would be brought together with
the dessert. Okay.
But I saw a video recently of, I think it was King Charles hosting Emperor of Japan. and they had this gala dinner at Buckingham Palace. And I saw table setting. I always watch all that to see what is the news. And I saw that the dessert cutlery was placed above the plate. So now it's also acceptable in a formal dining, but not, I would say, like now even to the level of a royal dining, that the dessert cutlery is placed above the plate. There are two kinds of eating. There's a continental style and there's the American style.
Continental
Meaning
Europe.
European.
Okay.
European. So general, like Europe, Spain, France, England. So continental, I think, looks more elegant.
And tell me what that is.
So continental is when you hold the fork in your left hand and the knife in the right hand, and then you cut the food one at a time, same as American, but you never place the knife back and you don't switch the fork back and forth in your hand. So you keep the knife down and you just eat with the fork. You continuously, so you cut.
So
eat
does
with the
it
fork.
and is the fork
So the fork always
face
looks
down?
The fork always looks with tines down. It
Right,
never
and then
should
you
be up.
put the tongs are down.
The tongs are always facing down, so you put it up and down, facing down, and then you keep the knife in your left hand throughout the meal while you're cutting it. The American way has more motion to it, which I think
We cut.
you cut,
switch
you
sometimes.
you place the knife, you switch the fork to your right hand, and then you flip the up. You like when you turn around, you hold it like a spoon, and then you go like that and in and out. I think when you are at a formal dinner, if you were to observe two people, you'd notice how the European way looks more elegant because it's less of emotion involved. So it looks effortless,
Distracting.
less distracting.
Conservation of movement.
And in order to look more elegant and more well-mannered, we have to draw less attention to our motion. So when we're in a rush, when we are like,
What do you do when you just took a bite and now somebody asks you a question?
you would chew it. You can point with your fingers that, I'm chewing.
1 second.
Like, 1 second, I'm chewing. You can gesture it so the person knows you heard them, you're going to answer. And this actually will make them more mindful when next time they're asking a question. I always watch when people eat and I'll ask a question once I notice that you have chewed and you're about to swallow. So I'll ask you a question before you put the bite in and not when you just put it in. So obviously you have to chew
So
it.
you time it in
You
between
time it
bites,
in between.
and that's part of knowing etiquette.
Exactly.
Now, how do you eat soup? Do you scrape the back of the spoon on the bowl?
You do it away from you. The reason
So you
you take the spoon, you spoon it away from you.
Oh, you spoon the soup away from you.
Because the bottom of the spoon might have some drops from the soup, so you would kind of touch it to the other side of the plate,
The outward
and the
side.
outward side, and that way you'll make sure that there are no drops underneath. So when you put it back, like when you bring it back to your mouth, there will be no drops all over you. It just makes it more clean. But to be honest, I've noticed a lot, and I'm watching always to see how people at the highest level eat, and I realized that this has changed a lot as well. They're just drawing it towards themselves because it's just easier. It's more effort to put it all the way out and then back in. But if I am at a formal dinner, or if I'm in a business dinner or lunch and I'm wearing something white, or I'm wearing something that I don't want to create any mess, I will definitely scoop it away, because that will make sure that there are no drops on my shirt, and then having to or definitely never place it like a napkin, like a bib, like over here tucked into your shirt.
We only do that at Joe's Stone Crab in Miami,
yeah.
but it's a thing.
It's only in lobster places, like where they're serving you lobster, they bring this bib, you're supposed to be placing that. Otherwise, never, because it shows how not well-mannered or how not skilled you are that you have to tuck it into your shirt to eat it like that.
Man, that is fascinating. Thank you. What are the most important aspects of etiquette we should use on social media?
I would say that we should consider social media as another means of communication in a way that you would approach or you would message a person or write things like you would in person. For me, I think what I'm experiencing as having a public account is that people will write without hello, without just like you post something, they would say dress ? You don't talk like that in person. You don't walk away. I'm like, dress, jacket. You say, hi, Elena, love your jacket. Can you please share where it's from? It only takes about 2 seconds for you to say that. But the chances of you getting a response from me is much higher when you take an effort to at least write 3 words to me instead of just, I'm not supposed to answer to a question that says jacket.
You're not supposed to?
Because I would not answer to someone who writes to me jacket question mark.
Why?
Because for me, it means I don't accept that kind of communication with me. I put a certain boundary too. I expect you to take the effort if I'm taking the effort to address you. I think people these days take things for granted and like you are obliged to respond to everything, every question they have. Or, you're a public persona, so take it all. But I'm not a machine. I'm a human being. So for me, it's about drawing the line as to what is acceptable, what's a form of communication that's acceptable with me and what's not. You don't
You
want
just don't want like
yes,
feeders, like
feeders
kickers,
like that. You
dick
don't
jacket, this, that. You're like,
it's not the way
Yes.
of communication I would have to any blogger. If I write something, I'll say, hey, I love, the book that you shared. Can you please share the title or something like that? And I also, for me, social media it's important to understand that anything that you write is going to stay there. Don't ever think that you can get away with anything. People get hurt by the posts they made on social media years and years ago. They say, in person forgets, but online never forgets. People have screenshots. People have archives of things that you wrote. So you don't want to damage your life, your career, your everything by just being in the heat of a moment and writing something because you felt like it in the moment. You might later delete a comment, but someone might have the screenshot. So I always tell everyone, all my students, that when you go on social media, treat it like it's a thing that leaves traces everywhere. Even your emails, even your personal emails, treat them like someone can read them. So don't overshare or overexpose things that might get you into trouble. And that's basically anything you share that's too personal. That's what I think.
how much do you charge your clients?
It depends on the hours that I'm teaching and depends on the class that I'm teaching. So if it's a class that I'm doing pretty much every month, that's like ready to go, it will start from somewhere from $450 and above if it's in person. But if it is something that I've tailor-made for a client, it can range up to thousands of dollars depending on what is the need. If I'm only designing the course for a particular client, so it will be more expensive. If it's a ready-made course that is available, I've been doing it over and over again, they'll be at $450 and above.
Have you ever traveled with a client?
I have traveled for the client, but I haven't traveled with the client. So I'll travel to the city or destination of a client and do my courses there and then come back. Yes, I do travel for clients.
Okay. What etiquette are kids these days missing that the older generation had?
Oh, a lot of them actually. One particular one is listening to your parents or not talking back to your parents. I mean, for me, it's a huge thing. I really think that a child should say their opinion. I'm all for, listening, hearing out, but I do think that there should be a respect between a parent and a child. You can be your child's friend, but you're also their parent. There's a difference between being a friend and being a parent. And parent is someone you respect, who's your mentor, who guides you. So maybe it's also cultural influence on me that in our culture, it's very important to respect parents. I read somewhere that you don't have to love them, you just have to respect them.
From a kid's point of view.
When you're an adult as well, some people might have had an unfortunate experience with parents where they cannot love them. But I say, even if you can't force love on to your parents, you have to at least respect them. And so for me, it's really important to ensure that kids don't talk back to adults. They can voice their opinions, but the way they voice it should be done in a
respectful manner. How do you, how can parents whose kids are now beyond they don't really show the respect, and now the parents are saying, okay, I have let this go on too long. Now, how does a parent now garner respect with their child? How do they start enforcing that? Is it too late?
It depends on the age, but I think a lot of the things that we are taught are infiltrated into our minds and become our second nature the earlier we start. So even with my kids now, my daughter is 9 and my son is 6, I'm all about listening to how they feel, respecting their opinions, but it's the way that she says the opinion is that I could tell her, this is not the way you're talking to me. You should say differently. You should say, instead of like, throwing a tantrum, you're at the age where you can understand how you can voice your opinion. So for me, it's about, I will listen to you, but you need to gather yourself and you need to keep that respect towards mom, because I don't allow myself to talk like that to kids. I don't allow myself to swear around my kids. I don't allow myself to get very heated into arguments with anyone around my kids, because I don't want them to see that kind of a behavior. A lot of people might say, oh, but you're not being your true self. But I don't want my child to pick on that. I want them to maybe protect their childhood, maybe protect their psychological, mental well-being, because a lot of the traumas we have is from hearing certain heated arguments from adults that might not necessarily be involving around us, but we always thought it was about us. And all those things are kept in our back of our mind, but it was between mom and dad. It was between mom and someone else, So for me, it's important to draw the boundaries. And I always tell my daughter, you have to draw your own boundaries too. If if someone oversteps them, you can tell them, okay, this is your opinion. If you say I'm a very vocal child. Yeah, okay, I'm a vocal, but it's the way that they tell her that matters to me. They cannot overstep the boundary of being, rude to her or being aggressive towards her. I mean, like teachers or anyone around. So for me, it's about drawing the boundaries first with my child and then teaching my child how to draw those boundaries with other people.
Oh man, I love that. I tell my children too, look, I want you to know something. Adults are not always right. And sometimes you do know better, even though you're younger.
Yes.
Because when I was younger, talking about the different generations, we were just told adults are, implied. It was implied adults are always right and you respect all adults. And that part was good, right? But the fact that I always felt like they knew more or they were right is what I wanted to eliminate with our children. So I said, look, adults are not always right. And sometimes you do know more, even at 4 or 5 or 6, and trust your own knowingness. However, you must respect all adults and treat them with respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that. How has being a mom changed your view of etiquette?
I realized with my own kids that I cannot teach etiquette to children. I can only show them that. I get a lot of clients asking me, can you please teach my child etiquette? I always respond, I would love to welcome you first, and then we can talk about your child. Because I had an experience of teaching etiquette in school, and that was only an hour. A class, it was about 45 minutes, and it was twice a week. But it wouldn't help unless the child got to go home and practice that. They would come to me and say, teacher, but you were saying I need to eat like that, but at home we don't eat like that. And this was a private school, so mind you, it was all very people had...
Yeah, they'll go home and get made fun of.
Yes, not even fun of, but they didn't practice it at home. They didn't practice eating with fork and knife at home in a certain way. So for me, for them, it was just a class in school, but nothing that applied in real life. So nowadays, I tell to all my clients that I am more than happy to welcome you first. We'll go through etiquette course together with you, and then you'll go home and do it together with your kid. Because as much as I love to teach kids, I'm not present in their life. And kids learn only through example. The only time I can teach is once they're 14, 15, 16, because they don't only just learn by mimicking parents, they start looking for mentors outside their home. They start looking for girls or guys that they look up as a role models. So a lot of young people can look at me and think, oh, I want to be like her. And they're interested, and they will be learning with a lot more passion than if I were to teach a 7-year-old, because mom took you to a class, you don't want to go. Mom doesn't use whatever rules this lady is telling me, and then I don't want to do that. But when they're 15, 16, they start looking up to me as a role model, and they start willingly to emulate this kind of a behavior. I actually have this phrase that I say, I am a plate-filled mother rather than a bench mother. So for me, everything is about showing my child that I'm doing so they can emulate me. For example, my kids didn't want to start learning Arabic because obviously it's a very difficult language to learn. Now they're starting their 5th language. And I am taking online classes myself, and I'm actually showing them that I'm doing it intentionally. So I put up a class that we have the same teacher, so we share the teacher. And every time they're like, Mom, but we don't want. I was like, you know what? I also don't want, but look at me, I'm learning. And now I feel like they're more enthusiastic. Same with horseback riding. I pushed them to take horseback riding. They didn't really want it, but then I was like, I'm going to take two. Same was with skiing. I picked up skiing much later in life, but I always want to show my kids that I'm not only like sending you off to ski and sitting on the bench and being like, go ski, you have to do it, it's good for you. But I'm with you learning. And I've been learning once I became a mom. So they're actually seeing me through that learning curve. My daughter is a better skier than I am. So I'd show them like, see, I can't even do it. And you're younger and see how you're doing it great. So for me, it's really about whatever you want to teach your child, you have to show it, and you have to show it consistently. It will not work if you just talk about it.
And how do you balance? They love the word balance out there. How do you balance being working, you work, versus now you're taking all these courses and classes with your children? Where do you find the time? How do you make the time?
I do it whenever they do it. So, for example, skiing, we would learn it every winter whenever we would go to a ski resort. So it's not like we're doing it throughout the year. But if we're on a vacation, I'm not the mom that would sit and sip tea and while my kids are skiing. I'll be with them on the slopes, learning together, showing that, we're working on this together. So I picked up bicycling later on in my life when I was 27. So, I've taught both of them how to bike. So, it's important for me to take them along this journey and show them that I'm learning as well. In terms of to answering your question to balance, I don't really believe in a balance. And, maybe I will not be loved for this, but I think there isn't a total balance. There's days when you do great as a mom and not so great as a working person because you didn't have time to devote to your work emails.
Story of my life.
And there are days when you're a great career woman, like I am. I just traveled from Azerbaijan, left my kids in Baku, and I'm doing
That's the capital.
It's a capital, exactly. And I'm doing this interview with you. So now I'm doing really well for my work, but I'm not really there for my kids. So I'm very realistic in that. I think there isn't a total balance that you can like split. There are days when you're great at something and really not good at the other. And it's all about then just making sure that you're not completely 100% just in one. You can have 3 days when you're a great mom and 4 days when you're a career woman. I'm also blessed to say that I have help at home and I work for myself. So I have this time where I can actually manage my schedule instead of, for those moms that don't have any help and are working in the office, it's much more harder on them than it is on me. And I understand this opportunity that I have, and I'm very blessed and thankful for that I've been able to build my brand and being able to enjoy this independence in a way. But there are a lot of responsibilities that come with that independence, that there's no a stable paycheck, that it all depends on how much you put in. That's how much you get out of it. So there's a lot of duties that come with that, but a lot of perks as well.
Wait, did you say you're married?
I am married.
You're
yes.
married. So, and how does the husband role fit into all of that? Are you?
My husband is a very career-driven guy. So he works at a career. So he's not independent. He works at an institution, and he also co-owns a lot of businesses in the country. So he's very much busy himself. So it's both of us are very career driven and are independent in the work. And then there are times when, family time and Sundays and vacations that we like spend together. So I think it's just, he's a very independent person. I'm an independent person. And then we came together to become partners. So it's very equal in that terms.
So he never says you work too much?
He has never told me that you work too much because he works a lot too.
Yeah.
So it's like when he's busy, he's happy that I have something to do, because if I didn't have anything to do, I'd be nagging him, right?
Right.
I would. So it's all about equal partnership in our relationship. I think it's about both of us want to do well. Both of us want to be, successful in what we do, and we enjoy what we do. It's not like we have to do it. It's because we really love what we're doing. And that's how we balance it, I guess.
Oh, man, I love it. Why don't you like the term high value women?
I think it puts a label on a woman as if there's someone who's a low value. And why is that we don't have high value men? Like, no one calls himself a high value man. Men are just like, we're cool, we're great, we're born this way. And women then have to have this sort of like criteria as to some women are high value and other low value. Like what makes a woman low value? Why would she be a low value? To me, all women are high value, you know. Every human being is a high value regardless of your gender. So why would we label them like that? I use the term well-mannered, respectful, kind, elegant, knowledgeable or educated. These are things I could use to describe any person. But
I am
put a
so going
value.
to change my nomenclature on that because I think I'm guilty of saying that before. And now you just illuminated my perspective on that.
I think it creates a really negative stigma and creates this, I don't, how do I explain this? It feels like a high value woman should look a certain way, sound a certain way, have a certain like standard of living, and the rest of the women are just, low value things. But why?
Yeah.
Who said that? Like who creates that box that you have to fit in? It's one thing you have self-esteem. Yeah, a self-esteem woman knows, her boundaries, and that's different. But that could be a man with a high self-esteem. That could be applicable to both. But I've never, ever in my life saw an article that says high-value men. Where do I find how to become a high-value gentleman? Like,
Oh, yeah.
no one talks about that.
Mm-mm.
It's all about how to become a successful man, how to, all that is like, that could be applied to both genders. Doesn't have to be only about men.
Right.
So I want to get rid of that label.
Yeah, I agree. Restore the value of women to society is a big purpose of mine.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
So that
Restore the value like that they already are.
exactly. It's intrinsic in
That's
you.
right.
But then we're all valuable because we are humans. But then what we make of ourselves is something that you can then use to describe us. Okay, she's educated. She is, knows her boundaries. She's elegant. She's eloquent. She's well-mannered. She's skilled. Anything,
And what about the Middle East? How do you perceive that the men view the women there? Or how do the women view themselves?
I have this, I would break this stereotype because I'm Muslim, but I'm liberal Muslim. So it's different for different countries. But because Azerbaijan was part of Soviet Union, there wasn't really Islam up until 1991. People practice it, but like really low key.
Right.
Their religion wasn't a thing in Soviet Union. So everyone was supposed to be atheist. So I'm very liberal Muslim. I am spiritual Muslim is what I love to call myself. I believe in God. I'll go to church. I'll go to temple. I'll go to any place where I believe like there's energy around. But I'm not necessarily a ritualistic Muslim. And for me, when I've deep dived into Islam and learned,
Oh, dear.
no worries.
Okay.
So when I actually started learning about Islam, again in US, because we had Islamic studies, I realized how much the Islam as a religion, not the way it's interpreted in social media and some extremists, but in a way that it brought the value of women higher in the society where women would be digged together alive, buried together alive with their men. Before Islam, in that part of the world, when a man died, they would bury all females that belonged to him alive with him. When Islam came to that area, those all rituals were forbidden. And Prophet Muhammad says, the heaven is under the foot of a mother. So that's why Arab men and like middle Muslim men respect mothers so much. They have this like mother dominant, like a lot of love for mothers.
Oh, let's bring that to the U.S.
And I think if you look at the good parts in every religion, you can find those. And for me, actually, all these cover-ups and hijabs and all that, I'm not wearing any. That's my personal choice. I don't like when it's enforced on me or said you have to wear it or otherwise you're not like a high value woman. So I don't believe in that. But I do think that Middle East has a lot of respect for women. A lot of things that, like offering a place for women is a must. Allowing women to stand under AC and men would be standing under the sun. They still have these manners that they are still respecting based on the gender roles. So I have experienced. I just was in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi recently, and I was standing under the shade, and I came out from a book fair, and it was really, really sunny, really, really hot. So I was waiting for the cab, and I couldn't find a shade. So the guards of the security area that was closed up, he walked up to me and he was like, "Do you need help?" I was like, "I can't get my cab around here." He was like, "I'll do it for you. You just go into the room under the AC. You don't stand here under the sun because it's really, really hot." And he opened the door, let me in. It was like security room. I'm not supposed to be there. And then he told the other guy, offer her a bottle of water and a little date so that, she's hydrated. And to me, that was what Islam is all about. That's what is respecting a woman, allowing her.
It's very safe in Dubai.
Very.
There's cameras everywhere.
Everywhere.
They know if you've done anything out of line. They're very respectful to women there.
They will never do anything disrespectful towards you, no matter
where they go in the dungeons.
Yes, they go in. Yes, I mean,
I know.
Yes, they're very, very strict with violating a woman, harassing a woman.
Yeah,
it's something that is not, and
which is so, the propaganda that isn't known as much until you go out and experience these other countries and cultures and traditions for yourself. And see firsthand, how you can formulate your own opinion versus what we've kind of been made to believe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all about, and that's why I always say, you have to learn about other cultures and traditions in order to have that respect towards others. Once you understand their ways of living, you stop judging others for doing something different than you. You understand it's part of their religion, culture, tradition. So let them do like they do. And respect, you don't have to love what they're doing, but you have to at least show respect.
Mm-hmm. And so when you were at a dinner table and let's say there's different traditions, but you aren't Catholic, but they say their prayers, or you aren't Jewish, but you're at a Passover.
At a Passover, yes.
So what is the etiquette for somebody in those circumstances? Do they
always follow the host? Do as a host does.
Yeah.
I have been invited to I was a student in GW, so I had a lot of international friends. I had a Malaysian friend. I had a lot of Jewish friends because GW is very much a lot of New York Jews study in GW. It was very, so one of my roommates was actually Jewish. I loved her. I still do. But so there were Muslim friends that I had. So we were all intermixed in terms of the religion and cultures where we came from, but we'd always follow the lead of the host. So if a Malaysian friend invited us over for dinner and he would eat with hands, would follow the lead and eat with hands. I was invited a few times to a Passover dinner, and I would just watch the host or watch my friend do it, and then I'll just follow her lead.
Mm-hmm. So no one gets offended that you're participating when you're not X, Y, and Z?
I think a lot of people just appreciate when you appreciate their culture. Mm-hmm. And even if you do it wrong and you're not mastering it, they love the effort that you put in. Mm-hmm. It's like when you speak a language, if you try and put an effort into speaking the language of a person, even if it's not so good, I love the fact that you at least tried.
Right.
So for me, it's all about putting in effort. Obviously, the host knows you don't know much about the rules and the rituals and things like that. But if you follow their lead, they'll really appreciate the effort you put in. That's why I teach that there's a difference between cultural etiquette, different cultures have their own ways of eating, but then there's a uniformal, in a way, Western formal dining etiquette that is intercontinental. If you find yourself at a gala dinner with multicultural people, not everyone can eat their own way because it'll create a mess at a table. That's where you have the Western formal etiquette that is outward, inwards, fork and knife, where you place it, so all those rules.
Yes. I'll end off with this one little story. I was in Abu Dhabi, and we were invited to the royal house for the Minister of Tolerance, who's the brother of the king. And so he's got a title, the Sheikh. And so Grant and I were invited. I was one of the only women in the room. And it was this big round area. And so I was just kind of watching everyone. When somebody new walked in, everyone stood up. He remained seated. Everyone stood up. So I would stand up. And then, so I picked up on that very quickly. And then when, they kept doing it, and Grant and I were sitting literally right next to him. And so then he said, no, to me, he says, don't get up. So I sat down, but everybody else is standing. So then by the second time, I'm not getting up because he told me don't get up. And so then while he was kind of looking off, I had half of the room telling me to stand up. And I'm like, oh my God, like, wait a minute, what do I do? It was very, very confusing.
But I would say when you first told me that you stood up, I would tell you don't. Again, this is very important in terms of culture, but also in terms of
Oh my
kind
God,
of
I can't
etiquette.
imagine. Okay.
There's social etiquette and there's business etiquette. In business, all genders are equal.
In what? In business?
In business etiquette,
Okay.
genders are equal. The hierarchy is based on your title. So, if your husband is higher than you in the hierarchy of this company, he's bigger than you are. If you were to be higher than him, you're a bigger person, the more important guest than he is, no matter the gender. In social etiquette, the rule still is true that women have a upper hand than men. So women should get the best seat in terms of the view. Women get to decide if she wants to handshake or not, so she'll extend her hand for a handshake first. And on par with shake, you are almost like the VIP because this is a social etiquette. You're socially at a dinner. You're a woman. He's a higher titled person. He doesn't have to stand up for anyone who walks into the room. But you're a woman, so you have an upper hand than your husband does. So you don't have to actually stand up. In social etiquette, women don't have to stand up to greet anyone. She can just remain seated. She can just not.
Well, why did they tell me, like, stand up?
I don't know who the rest of I don't know who walked in,
Well,
but
it
they
was
told you.
everybody that,
If he told you not to stand up,
I know, I didn't.
yes.
I listened to
his
him.
His word.
But yeah, maybe.
I guess they were confused as to, is the title an upper hand or the gender? But this was a social etiquette. This wasn't
Right, because we were in this big round room and the seating was around the room and they had the little coffees, teas. They were little small little things.
Yeah, like I said, it's a social etiquette. But also bear in mind that you were not there as a business partner. So if you were, say, a president of another country and you were at the same, you would have to stand up because it's not a gender that plays a role. It's your hierarchy. It's your title, right? So if all the presidents stand up, even if you're a woman, you can't just be seated.
Right.
Because you have the same position as everyone else. If you are your husband, you and someone else and some of your friends are at a social party, you're no longer the president. You're just a woman in a social setting.
Interesting.
So it changes your role.
Wow. And then lastly, so after that fascinating meeting, and then I had no idea what I was walking into. Somebody just invited us on the spur of the moment. We drive from Dubai over there. Now I'm sitting next to him. I know no traditions. Nobody's briefed me. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing there. I'm kind of just following along. So then he invites Grant and I to go into his helicopter where he's going to fly to Dubai to present the world's, in the Guinness Book of World Records, the tolerance of all these cultures of the UAE that have come together to show this camaraderie or unity. And so he invites us to this, and so Grant doesn't know if I'm invited because we don't know where the propaganda is women are less than there. So, but yes, he's like, yes, of course. And he actually made another woman come along with us so I would feel comfortable. I found all of this out later. So he is the pilot of the helicopter. Like I thought, there's this wheel. But it's a two-person helicopter. It was like a big Augusta. So, but he's piloting, and then there was another co-pilot, and then the airspace clears. We're up, we're going. And so then there's all these people there to greet him when he gets there, and he takes us on the little golf cart. We're on his golf cart. He's driving us around. I'm waving to all the people. It was fascinating. It was so fun. Now we get to this big event, and, he's walking through the people, and Grant's right next to him. Well, I'm in heels. I'm used to kind of following behind. I can never keep up with Grant. So I've followed behind, and the sheikh stops and looks for me. And, I kind of, he was like, wait. And he catches up and he lets me catch up. And then he walks side by side with me for the rest of the time. I ended up on the front cover of all these magazines and outlets and this whole thing the next day. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then, we think we're going to sit and watch this presentation because there was this big award ceremony. But instead, he calls us up on stage, and now I'm with him, and we're helping give out these awards. It was the best, most fascinating day, I think, of my life.
It's so wonderful. But didn't it change your perspective on how Arab women treat women? Arab men treat women.
And Grant was pushed kind of like it was me and him, and I was like.
So now look at him. But I'll tell you this: if you look at the cabinet of ministers or like women that are in power in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, there are a lot of women in the not presidential. Sorry.
Yes, I know. I learned that cabinet too.
You'll see, a table shake and a lot of women. They're dressed modestly, but they're participating at the table. They're showing up. So I have not seen, they held a COP28 recently in Dubai. It was a big climate change event that happened in Dubai, actually happening in November in Azerbaijan. So when they appointed a minister, cabinet minister for COP, 60% of them were women in Dubai. So the stereotype that Muslim men or Islam or in any way makes the women feel less, I can't say that, because if you look at the Middle East and see how much women are now empowered, same is happening in Saudi. The amount of women that are now doing things in creative arts and design and opening up museums and all that, all of them at a high level are a lot of women. I was actually attending a Muslim women summit in London recently. And there, I met this very beautiful, super smart woman from Qatar. Her name is Elena Cardone, and she was the financial, officer or chief financial officer of Qatar, Al Thani Foundation. She is such a beautiful woman, so elegant and so smart. And a lot of the people at higher up positions now in Qatar, in Saudi, in Abu Dhabi are women.
How did that happen recently with the changes?
It has happened with the change, I would say, globally. The same is for the U.S., I think. I mean, 50 years ago, you wouldn't see women and so much power,
Right.
It's happening all around the world, and I can't exclude a certain community out of it, saying Muslims are not doing it. It's only, happening in U.S. or the West.
Yeah.
I think it's happening all around the world, and they're keeping up with this momentum. But I have never felt disrespected. I don't know if anyone has encountered that, but it could be just an individual encounter. there are bad people everywhere. They're regardless of your religion, cultural background, or anything. So breaking the stereotypes and experiencing things for yourself, now that you have experienced this, you've changed your impression.
It completely changed me. That trip changed me forever.
Yes.
That's when I really said, you know what? I'm never believing propaganda again. Okay. I'm going to witness it firsthand for myself.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. It's like when they show us from abroad, it feels like the wild, wild west, you think everyone is uncultured. You think everyone is everything is big trucks and big houses and just everyone that's the stigma of US. But when you come to US and you meet people here, you talk to people, you realize, they're smart, educated, cultured. It's not the wild, wild west. So the stigma is, how the West thinks of US, how US thinks of Middle East. It's just all these stigmas we have about others because we are not educated and didn't put an effort to do our own research. Mm-hmm. We believe what we're fed, So for me, in teaching etiquette, I just want to share more knowledge about other cultures and traditions and respect the differences. You don't have to love it. Again, I say it's yours is your life and theirs is theirs, but at least try to understand so you can respect it.
Wow. Well, you have certainly helped me today. I love it. You are so fascinating. Would love to travel with you. That would be an eye-opening experience. So fun.
Come to Azerbaijan, and anyone who's watching should come to Azerbaijan.
Okay, I might take you up on that.
Definitely.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much. I think a lot of people have had a lot of wow light bulb moments go off. Certainly I have. Thank you so much for being here today and for making the trip and leaving your beautiful family to come over and help and inspire and enlighten us today with your knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena, for having me. I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you.
About to grace us, whether extraordinary, 10x what I want.